Hi there, Winnebago owners. Today in your 2015 Winnebago Vista, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install Roadmaster's front sway bar. And this is what our sway bar looks like when it's installed. It is a direct replacement for your factory sway bar, but one of the things that I really like about this Roadmaster kit is you get all the components. Some replacement upgrade sway bars will just give you a new sway bar and maybe bushings to accommodate the larger diameter of their sway bar. But with the Roadmaster kit here, we also get new end links, which is an often common fail point on a sway bar is on your end links here where the bushings are, they tend to wear out. So I really like that they gave you everything here is all new. You get the end links, you get the hardware, the bar, everything. So this is also going to be a great component for maybe if you've been driving your motorhome for a while and you've kind of lived with how it rides. You know that it could be better, but you've just been living with it. And then after a while, maybe your end link starts to wear or get damaged. This is a fantastic kit to just go ahead and make that upgrade to, because you can repair those broken components and put on better ones in its place. Everything is custom fit for this vehicle, so our sway bar end links here are molded. You can see they're angled appropriately to match right up with the factory attachment point up there and line up with our bar. All of our bushings and bushing caps have also been custom fit for this, so they will mount directly into all the mounting locations of your factory sway bar. Now the first time that we drove this thing, we had some clunk noises and stuff, so we got it in the shop right away. We ended up finding some loose bolts on the rear sway bar, which was leading to excessive sway and clunk noises. But we've gone ahead and done our upgrades as well, so it should feel even better now that we've repaired the issue it had and also added the upgrades on top of it. We're going to start here on our uneven bump section, which is going to simulate like hitting a pothole. And it feels pretty good. That first bump, I barely even feel it here in the steering wheel. A lot of times you hit these things and it jerks the wheel pretty good, but it's absorbing a lot of it pretty well. You can see it moving the wheel a little bit there. We do still got a little bit of sway, but we're not really swaying that far. You know, we got a little bit of rock going on. We can hear a couple of things bouncing back there, but we're staying fairly upright. So it definitely has made a difference over where we were at. I don't hear our clunk noise anymore, so that's good. We're heading into the even bump section now, and this is going to simulate like pulling in and out of your driveway or going over a speed bump. Now, it does feel like it's a little bit softer than it was before. Fixing the sway bar, and sway bars don't really affect when you're hitting things dead straight on, just your sway. But Sumo springs will help out in pretty much all situations, and we can definitely feel some dampening going on there. We're now going to head into the slalom section here, so we got to get around over there. And this is where we're going to mimic an evasive maneuver. And this is where I usually notice the biggest differences from our installation. Because before, when you hit into it and you get kind of a rock, we had that clunk going on before. But a lot of times going over the bumps, we're not really at a super high speed, so sometimes it's not real noticeable. But once we get out here and get some speed into it, it becomes real obvious the differences that have been made. So we're getting into there. We're going to get a little bit more speed going here. All right, we've come into our section now, so we'll start to get it rocking and see how she feels. And we do got some things that are kind of moving back there, but as far as the sway, we're staying fairly upright. This is still kind of a beast of a motorhome, but definitely has made some improvements over where we were. We're not swaying nearly as far. We still got some stuff bouncing around a little bit inside. For this customer here, I think I would recommend a set of rear Sumos to help dampen that out and smooth it out a little bit more. But as far as the evasive maneuver goes, it does feel like we're able to make a quick response without putting ourselves in danger here, even though some things are kind of moving around. It feels very responsive. You know, you got some things sliding on the dash, but as far as the driver, I don't feel like I'm being thrown around, so I feel very comfortable that I'd be able to maintain control of the vehicle in any of those kind of evasive maneuver situations. The way our sway bar helps to reduce sway and potentially prevent it from happening, we can see here that the bar is attached to our axle here, and our end links are attached to the frame here. Now, the frame of our vehicle and the body and everything there is supported by the suspension that sits on top of our axle, so it's kind of two independent pieces. Our axle here with our tires on, it's pretty much always going to be planted onto the road surface. But as you take turns and stuff, your body can sway on the suspension. If you make a a hard turn to the right, the body's going to want to sway like this, because that weight kind of throws itself to the outside. Or maybe you get a heavy crosswind from just the air blowing by, or maybe a big semi drives by and that crosswind blows you and your body starts to sway like this. Well, our links here that are attached to the body are attached here to the end of the arms. So as our motorhome goes to sway, if it gets, let's say it's swaying in this direction here, you can see here now that this side over here, the frame is closer to the axle, and on the opposite side it's further away. Well, in order for the frame to get closer to the axle, that means that this link here has to go down, so it's pushing down on this arm. On the opposite side, it's doing the opposite, and it's twisting it up. So our bar is twisting. Well, it doesn't want to twist. It's in its natural state here. Look at this big old beefy piece of metal. The spring material here will twist some, but it wants to snap back, and what that does is it pulls you back upright. And you're fighting the sway bar the whole time. So when it starts to go to sway, you're twisting that bar. The bar doesn't want to, but you know, the weight of the body's a lot, so it's going to overcome it. And then once it hits a certain point, you're not going to sway anymore, and that sway bar and the rest of your suspension is going to help bring you back upright. Now, as you're coming back, you got some momentum there, so you may go beyond center and then kind of sway, kind of oscillate and then straighten back up. A bigger bar here is going to prevent how far that you sway and how many oscillations you have back and forth. It might be the difference of swaying pretty far and having 1, 2, 3, something like that before it settles out into just a little bit of sway and then going right back without hardly ever even passing beyond center. So it does make a huge difference. You can get these Roadmaster sway bars here for the rear axle as well as the front. The rear axle sway bar, I really like that one as well. What's cool about the rear one is that it's not a direct replacement, so your factory rear sway bar will remain in place, and you're going to add an additional sway bar to the rear. To further help smooth out the ride of your vehicle and gain control of it, I would also recommend a set of Sumo springs, and you can see one of those installed right here. You can get those also for the front and the rear axle, and those are just additional dampeners that will help support the weight of the vehicle, and they also help to reduce sway because as the body goes down and starts to squish it again wants to be in its normal resting position, so it'll push back to help bring things back upright again. This will also help to smooth out your ride. And lastly, there's one more component I'd recommend in addition to front and rear Sumo springs and sway bars is a steering stabilizer. Those install on the drag link here. This is a bar that connects between one tire to the other, and it will connect to the frame, and you'll set it up and install it at a point where your steering wheel is perfectly straight, the wheels are perfectly straight. So if you're driving down the road and you hit any potholes that jerk the wheel to the left or to the right, that dampener is going to help to absorb that. There's a gas shock absorber inside of it that will help reduce how much it jerks the wheel, and there's also a coiled spring on it that it, when set up in the straight ahead position, wants to return to that position. So if it does jerk the wheel to the left a little bit, the shock will dampen it, compress some, but our spring is also going to either compress or stretch depending on the way the wheel jerks. And that spring is then going to push back to return to its normal resting position, which is going to help bring the steering wheel back to center. All these things help to reduce the amount of fatigue that you get when driving your motorhome because you're having to fight all the different forces out there on the road, whether you're hitting potholes or maneuvering around debris, passing people, or just turning on some of the windier roads. All these things are going to make that a whole lot more comfortable for your passengers and reduce how much effort you're having to put in controlling that motorhome. That can make a big difference in how you feel when you reach your destination, and that could be the difference between showing up at your destination and crashing, and turning that with all these upgrades into showing up to your destination and getting your campsite set up that same night, so in the morning you're ready to just enjoy yourself. Now that we've covered some of the features of our sway bar, why don't you follow along with us and we'll show you how to get it installed. We are going to be taking off the old one and getting this one on, but these really aren't that difficult. This is something I'd say you could probably do in your driveway in about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. It is actually a fairly easy job to complete. We'll begin our installation underneath the vehicle here. You will want your vehicle parked on a flat surface so the suspension's loaded, because if you lift your motorhome up and like with your leveling jacks or something, you're going to put pressure on the sway bar, and that's going to make it difficult to remove. So we're now going to remove our end link here. That's where we're going to start. We're going to remove them here from the frame. Our new sway bar comes with new end links, so we don't need to take it off at this end, just up here. We'll need to take the bolt out that goes through the end link here. And then you see there's this little strap kind of here. So there's another bolt right above it. We don't need to take the strap all the way off. We can just slide the end link right down below it, but it does kind of clamp on it a little bit, so we're just going to loosen that top one up a little bit just to be able to slide that out of there. We're going to use a 15 millimeter socket on the bolt heads And on each of these bolts here, there's a nut that's on the inside here. We're gonna use an 18 millimeter for that, to hold that nut on the inside. All right, so we've got our nut removed. That's that there. We're just gonna set that down. The bolt will slide out. Before we slide it out, it's probably gonna be under a little pressure, so we're gonna loosen that top one up a little bit. And you might need to switch to a wrench in some situations. It just kind of depends on where your hoses are and how they fit. And a lot of times you may or may not need to hold the nut on the other side with this. But again, we just need to loosen this so this slides out of here. So sometimes you get lucky and you can just kind of put a couple of turns on it. But I can see our nut spinning with it, so we're not going to get that lucky. All right, so that's probably pretty good. We just looking to loosen it a little bit. We can then pull our bolt out. Looks like it's still a little stiff, so we might have to loosen that top one just a hair more. Okay, I can definitely see a gap there now. So at this point, our bolt's just gonna be a little tight just because it's probably been in there for a while. This is a older vehicle. It's about 7 years old now. So yeah, when that's the case like that, when they get stiff, you can just use your ratchet and just thread it on out of there. Looks like we had to switch to our wrench here just because we were getting close to the pulley there. We don't want to get our ratchet stuck. So we'll just switch to our wrench to get it the rest of the way out. We're then going to go over to the other side and we are going to remove the same bolt from the other side. All right, so we got that out of there. You can see that this is loose. There was a washer behind it there. We're going to be using different end links, so the hardware that you got here you can just save. So if you ever wanted to put this back on or give it to one of your motorhome buddies that's got a similar motorhome that might have a broken one. So we're going to head to the other side and take that one off, and then we're going to go to our caps after that. So now we're going to take off the bushing caps. When I remove these, I like to not remove it entirely. So I've already taken the other side loose, and I'll show you exactly what I did on that side. Because this bar is pretty heavy here, so we don't want it to fall down on us when we're working. So what I'll do is we're going to use our 18 millimeter to hold the nut, and we're 15 millimeter to turn the bolt. We're going to zip it out. And then as soon as you get to the end of the bolt there, we just turned it back in about a turn. And that way this can't fall off of here, so we can have a little bit more control with no tools in our hand when we go to pull this thing down. So I got both the bolts on the other side already set up like this. So we're gonna get these here kind of set up. This top one here, we don't necessarily need to set up since we're getting ready to take it out of there, but all the ones up to your very last one, I recommend setting up like that so this thing can't fall on you. Oops. All right, so we got our last bolt here. That one is loose. You can see our bar here is pretty loose here, so it's about ready to come out of there. I usually use my body to support it. So I'm just kind of resting it on my shoulder. If you're laying on the ground, maybe kind of rest it on your chest or your arm. We're going to take that bolt out. That's why we want it resting on our arm there, on our shoulder. Then we'll head over to the other side and do the same thing over here. All right, so we got the last bolt removed there. We'll now walk it away from the vehicle and we'll set it down outside. So before we install our new sway bar, this is a perfect opportunity to take a quick comparison and look at the old one versus the new. And right away you can see that our new one here is significantly beefier and a larger diameter than what our factory one is. In addition to the sway bar being a bigger, beefier sway bar, look at the difference between these end links. Massive difference there. This is going to last significantly longer than these ones will. They are pre-bent as well to give you a nice custom fit on your motorhome. You can see it's got that subtle bend in there to make this one line up exactly the way it needs to in the vehicle. We also get new bushing caps and bushings, and these are heavier duty bushing than what your factory ones are. You can feel the difference between them. These are much stiffer than those ones are over there. Those ones are much softer. And over time, the softer material does tend to kind of squish out the sides. These ones typically last quite a bit longer than the factory ones will. So now we've taken a quick look at just the difference. We can go ahead and get this bar prepared so we can set it in place, because we do got to do a little bit of preparation on our bushings to get them installed. So now we're going to prepare the bushings here. You get this lubricant included in your kit. We're going to use this on the inside of our bushing. Now, some customers have stated that they get irritation from the lubricant, so you may want to consider wearing some latex gloves or something to protect your skin. I've never noticed it myself, but everybody's body's different, and you know your body better than anybody else. So just do what you think is best. We want to thoroughly coat the interior of our bushing here. So we're laying it on pretty thick, making sure we get it smeared all the way around across the surfaces on the inside. Once you've got it fully coated on the inside here, kind of scrape off any excess grease you got there on the inside. And then I take the tiny bit of grease that I got left down here and put it on the outside. We don't want a lot of grease on the outside, but just a little tiny bit like this can help reduce any kind of squeaks and rattles. After we've got that, you can see this is a split bushing, so it opens up. So we're gonna open this up and slide it right onto our bar. Have to lift up on the bar just a little bit for it to slide in there. And then you can set your bushing cap on top. We're gonna do the same thing for the other bushing and place it over here on the other side. Before we bring our sway bar up here, we're going to go ahead and put our end links in place, because I find it usually the easiest if we hang it from the end links and swing it up into position. That way the end links are kind of holding most of the weight for us, because it's a pretty heavy bar. So our bar here does have that bend in it that we looked at. You can see that the bend here is at not a midway point. You have a longer section and a shorter section. The shorter section is going to be down towards the ground. The longer section is going to go up here and bolt into the frame. We want it, when it sits, to have the shorter section here angled towards the outside of the vehicle. So it'll sit there just like this. This is incorrect, and this is correct. So now I'm just going to slide it up in between the bracket there, just where our old end link was. And we're going to take the bolt that comes in our kit, we're going to slide it through, and this is the longer bolt. You'll have shorter and longer. We want the longer ones here. It'll slide all the way through your end link and through the frame. There we go. And then we'll place the nylon locking nut on the other side. I'm going to snug this up a little bit, but we don't want to snug this all the way down yet, because we do want our end link to be able to rotate at this point. If you snug it down real tight, it's going to be stiff and difficult to move. But we're going to run it down just a little bit, just to ensure that the nut doesn't back off of there or anything like that. So we're going to grab a 19mm socket and wrench just to snug that up some. All right, and that'll be good enough there. We don't want it to be, again, too tight. It's not going to back off. We're now going to put the one on the other side in the same way. This one does have is slightly trickier, just because of the compressor being here. The instructions mention that you might want to put the bolt from the inside going outward if you're having difficulties, but I'll show you how I did it here to get it in this way, because I'd prefer not to have the bolt sticking out if I could. So what we did is, if you take this, you can see how the upper bracket there we loosened up. So if you rotate it towards the front, you can slide your link in here, and now we're in front of the compressor where we can easily slide our bolt through. Go ahead and slide it through, and then when you rock it back down, it's going to hit the frame there. Back the bolt out just enough to clear the frame. And look at that, it rotates right into position there, and we can slide our bolt through the frame and attach our nut just like the factory one, and that way we don't have any excess sticking out here in the way. It looks better this way, and you get better clearance this way. Then our nut's just going to go in there and install just like it did on the other side. Do make sure you've got your sway bar, make sure you have your end link in the correct orientation. It's going to be the same as the other side. Longer section bolted in up here, shorter section at the bottom, angled towards the outside. We're now going to take the same long bolts that we just had, grab two of them, and take the washers that come in your kit and slide them on there. It's It's nice to have these prepared. We're going to be using these in just a moment to slide through our sway bar and end links here to attach them together. They are going to slide from the inside towards the outside like that. So I'm going to grab the bar now. We're going to go ahead and lift it up and get these slid through. We're going to go ahead and get up here to attach it. We want our Roadmaster sticker facing the way that we can read it when we go to put it up there. Our end links are going to sit towards the inside of our sway bar. So we're going to kind of just hold up one end here, slide through. After sliding through the end link, we are going to place another washer over our bolt. And then we're going to slide our sway bar onto the bolt. There we go. Once we've got that slid through, take a nylon locking nut, slide it onto the other side. We're going to use the same series of hardware over here on this side. So we'll slide through, grab our washer, put it in place, and we can lift up on our sway bar and slide it through. That'll also get a nut here on the other side. Next, we're going to prepare our small bolts because we're getting ready to lift the bar up here and attach those bushing caps. So I'm just taking both the nuts off. I recommend setting them nearby, so we're going to set it right on top of the axle here so they're close by for us to easily reach them. Also going to take 2 washers and set them up there next to it. These 2 remaining bolts, we're going to put washers on them. So we're going to put one on there, we're going to put one on here. And on the other side, I went ahead and sat those near the axle as well, so I've got those ready. But on this side, we're just going to leave them in our hand here because we're ready to rotate this thing up to install it. So now we're just going to rotate it, kind of let the end links do a lot of the work for you. You might have to rotate your bushing caps as necessary to get them to properly line up, and they will slide down on the end if you need to slide it down a little bit. Go ahead and slide your bolts through the attachment holes. We got some pretty good corrosion going on here, so we're going to have to tap those through a little bit. So let me grab a hammer and we'll tap those. You normally don't need to tap the bolts like this. It's just this motorhome just has quite a bit of heavy corrosion on it. That's just makes the job a little bit more difficult, but it does all go together. After you've got them slid through, we put another washer over the threads, and then we put our nylon locking nut behind that to secure it in place. Then we're going to do the same thing on this side. You can see over here we are going to need to slide our bushing cap down a little bit to get it to line up properly. And that's pretty normal. And you may need to even slide the whole bar a little bit if it's not quite centered. But everything's still loose now, so we can easily adjust everything as necessary. Looks like it's going to be fairly, it's actually easier on this side. The bolts happen to slide right in. So it looks like the corrosion must have been a little worse over on the other side there. All right, now that we've got all the hardware loosely installed, at this point we just need to just double check our sway bar and center it as necessary, because it will still slide back and forth. This actually looks pretty centered, maybe just a hair this way. But that looks pretty good. So now we're just going to go back and snug them all down. All the new hardware that we put on here, we will use a 19mm socket and wrench to tighten them down. And then don't forget about that factory bolt that was up here for the little clamp at the top of your end link. That's a 15mm. So we're just going to go back and snug them down now. Once you've tightened down all of your hardware, you're ready to hit the road. I do recommend just taking it on a quick test drive, maybe doing a little slalom test on it. If you hear any clunks or noises, you may need to double check some of your bolts and snug them down a little bit more to prevent any noises from occurring. If you don't hear any noises though, you're ready to roll. And that completes our installation of Roadmaster's front sway bar on our 2015 Winnebago Vista.